Hello, everyone. We are here again on our Facebook page. Today, we are on our public Facebook page. Just a heads up. We just want that to be, up front that if you make comments, your comments are seen up there. But welcome. I'm here with Coach Diana. And as we usually do, if you could say hello, that would be really, really helpful because right now it just feels like I'm talking to my computer and that doesn't go well for me. I don't like talking to myself or talking to my computer. I like to talk to an actual person. And so if you're out there in cyberland on our Facebook page, could you just give a shout out and say, I'm here. Hello. Thank you so much. Appreciate you. I see it. I see you. And I am glad that you gave me a shout out. So welcome. We're today talking about kind of when life gets a little much. Yeah, when we're procrastinating, when we're overwhelmed, when things are too much on our plate, whether it's emotional stuff or it's just physical stuff like clutter. Diane and I were just talking about our closets right now feel a little overwhelming because there's just so many choices. And actually, I never choose most of my clothes. I wear the same things over and over and over again. So why do I need all that stuff? It's just driving me crazy and it's taking up a lot of space. So yeah, how many of you just get a little frozen and shut down when you are overwhelmed with the amount of choices that you have, or you're overwhelmed with the amount of clutter that you have, or you're overwhelmed with the amount of decisions that you may have to make, or you're overwhelmed with the amount of tasks that you have to do, or you're overwhelmed with the amount of problems that you have in your life, or you're overwhelmed with the amount of feelings that you're having, and you don't know what to do. How many of you would raise your hand with that's something that I get stuck in? And what do you do when you get overwhelmed? What do you do? What do you do? I head for the chocolate. That's my first fix. Dark chocolate, where are you? How about you, Diana? What do you do?
What do I do when I'm overwhelmed? I try to get quiet. If on a good day, I'm doing all the healthy things. What I just did in between work today and this, I went for a walk. I opened the windows. I listened to the birds. On a bad day, I head for the kitchen.
I love that you said that. I love that you said that because this is the hard truth. So I always tell you guys the truth. The truth is that we all get overwhelmed. I don't care how good of a Christian you are. Jesus got overwhelmed. So getting overwhelmed is not a weakness. It's not a sin. It's just part of being human, limited, and in a crazy world. Jesus says, in this world, you will have troubles. You will get overwhelmed. So don't think that, oh, what's wrong with me that I can't function in this moment? That we all can have those moments. We can all get overwhelmed with stuff. How you handle it, you just said it really well, Diana. Do I handle it in a healthy way or do I handle it in an unhealthy way? And do you know the difference? Do you know the difference?
But yeah, it's all the difference in being reactive or making some clear choices about what to do. Well, the first step is really noticing, honestly, sometimes I'm trying to think of what to do next, and I'm not recognizing that I'm feeling overwhelmed because I'm not thinking clearly. And I think a lot of times when there's emotional overwhelm or physical overwhelm, we're not really aware that we're not making clear choices because our emotions are flooding.
Mm-hmm. And so sometimes when our emotions flood, this is really important. Again, ladies, most of you are here, you're women of faith. And sometimes we've been kind of taught that our body is our enemy, like kill the body, kill the flesh, don't listen to the body, don't listen to your feelings, put all that aside and just follow Jesus. But our body is actually our friend. And our body is there to help us and our body is there to warn us. And so let's just start with our body. So when your body starts to feel overwhelmed, what does it do? What does it do? How do you know that your body is saying, we're getting overwhelmed, we're getting flooded? Your heart starts beating faster, right? You can't think clearly. You can't like put it together in your mind. It feels like everything is all over the place, like a million different light bulbs are going off at the same time, or all of them are going off at the same time, and you can't make sense of what's going on, right? Your body's doing that. What else is your body doing?
I like to use the word fog. There's kind of a mental fog.
Yeah, so the fog rolls in. And so when the fog rolls in real life, what happens? You can't see clearly. It's hard to know what to do. It feels a little scary. And when the fog rolls in your brain, that feels a little scary, right? And again, these are all normal, regular ways God has designed our bodies to handle and respond to different things in our environment. What else happens to your body?
There's one comment here. Reese says, I love this comment, 50 tabs open in my life.
I love that too. I love that. 50 tabs open. I have a lot of tabs open in my computer. It drives my husband crazy. Whenever he tries, like, because I'm like, oh, it's not working. It's not working. He goes, well, you have 50 tabs open. Let's just shut everything down and start from the beginning, right? And so, what's that a picture of? What's that a picture of? 50 tabs open and running. And what's happening to the computer when 50 tabs are open and running?
We joke about this, my daughter and I, because she's a mini me. And how many tabs do you have open on your iPhone, Mom? We've maxed it out at 500.
Yeah.
And that's could be an indication of I'm not clearly thinking and choosing, and I'm very distractible. I'm jumping from one thing to the next.
Mm-hmm. And although we might be capable of doing that, just like our iPhone is capable of, like I'll have this screen up, my husband's going, shut this off. Go. There's like 100 closes. He says, don't you know you're supposed to do that every day? And again, it's different. I'm not techie, so no, I didn't know that, but I think it is a symbol of that. And your iPhone only operates so long that way. And then you're wondering why it's not working, and you have to shut it off, right? So it can what? Reboot. And so it's a symbol. Sometimes our body, we have to, like, the very first thing, if you're feeling overwhelmed a lot, is I would say check your sleeping habits. Because guess what? Our body needs to reboot every single day. It's not a weakness. You're not a better person if you try to get by with less sleep. God has designed your body to sleep for most of us. And it's not 50%, 60%. Most of us, like 96% of us, are supposed to sleep for 8 hours a day. I just read a great book called Why We Sleep, and all the research and all the reasons why, and not by a Christian guy, but we're designed to sleep. And one of the most important things that I read in this that I thought was very powerful is right here is your prefrontal cortex. This is your thinking brain. So we have different sections of our brain. We have a feeling brain, we have a thinking brain, we have an emergency brain called our limbic system, which is our amygdala, right? And so we have different sections of our brain. And when we sleep, those sections do a lot of work to integrate our day's stuff. And one of the works that it does is this little part of our brain, our thinking and our reasoning and our logical brain, builds connections, new connections every night to our reactive brain, our amygdala. And when we don't sleep enough, those connections don't get rewired every day. And so if you find yourself reacting to stuff that you're wondering, like, why am I so reactive? I would say your first step is to check your sleep habits.
Wow.
Because that does not get rewired. If it doesn't get rewired in sleep each day, you are more likely to be reactive to life. And then you start feeling bad about yourself. I can't handle anything. What's wrong with me? I'm losing it. And maybe you're losing it because you're not taking care of yourself in the most basic way. In the book, he says, if I could tell you what you could do to improve the quality of your life, to improve your health, to help you lose weight, to have you better mental health, you would like, how much? What do I need to do? And he'd say, get 8 hours sleep. That's how important it is.
Wow, that's huge. Because think about it. We work so hard. We talk about regulating your nervous system. I did not realize that's literally happening when we sleep. I knew so many other things were happening, but regulating your nervous system?
There's a whole chapter on mental health and the
Wow.
correlation with depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder with a lack of sleep. And they're not sure what the chicken caused, the chicken or the egg. They're not sure people who don't sleep well have more mental illness issues, or people who have more mental illness issues don't sleep well. They're not sure of the chicken and the egg, but it makes a lot of sense that God has created sleep as a reboot. And your computer goes to sleep. If you don't turn it off regularly, it starts acting wonky. It needs that rest and restore too. Not 8 hours, but we do. Our bodies are not designed to go on and on and on and on and on. And your emotional health is dependent on that. Your ability to think is dependent on that. People, they did tests. It's called Why We Sleep, the book. And they did tests with people who only slept 7 hours instead of 8. And then they did tests with people who only slept 6 hours instead of 8. So it's not like they were sleep deprived. We think we can get by with 6 hours. They were cognitively impaired and emotionally reactive.
Oh, wow. Did they say, does it say in the book how to get those 8 hours, the best rest in those 8 hours?
It does. And it really talks against the medication. So so it's a real practical book, but it does go through a lot of the research, and he doesn't say it all, but it's all documented in the back. But it's a great book if you need some evidence to self-care. And I've been really working this year on getting 8 hours of sleep. I tested myself on vacation. I thought, I'm not going to set an alarm, and I'm just going to see what my body tells me I need. And I was sleeping 8 to 9 hours a night. And I thought, wow, I used to try to get by on 6 to 7 hours thinking, oh, I can get more done if I stay up later, and I can get by. I don't get by well. I was much more reactive. I was more depression prone. And so be careful with your sleep. That's one thing you can do to handle overwhelm, is make sure you get a good night's sleep for your big day.
If I could add to that little tip that you gave, one of the things my doctor taught me was that to stop eating several hours before you go to bed, because if your body is doing any of those processes, it's not doing the restorative work that it needs.
Yeah, your body takes a lot of energy to digest. And so if it's digesting while you're sleeping, the other work isn't being done. And so if you can cut off the eating at 7 o'clock and give your body time to do that digesting while you're winding down for the night and you're heading to bed at 10 o'clock, then your body can do all the other things. And some of that dream sleep and the REM sleep and all the other kinds of sleep is so critical for your emotional and physical health. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, the very first thing I would say is, how are you sleeping? Are you sleeping well? And are you sleeping enough? And are you prioritizing that as a good part of self-care? That is not selfish to sleep. You need to sleep.
I would say be patient with yourself. When I started working on my bedtime schedule, I was going to bed at midnight, 1 o'clock. It took me 3 years to get my body into a rhythm where my body now tells me it's time to go to bed. It tells me exactly when it shuts down. Some healthy practices I put into place where I have my phone set to, it dims, it goes to grayscale. And so everything in my environment is telling me, okay, Diana, it's time to start shutting down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sleep apnea is a sleep stealer and dangerous for health. And if that's your issue, there are solutions, and get them. Mental fatigue is far more exhausting than physical fatigue. Yeah. And physical fatigue or mental fatigue can lead to making poor choices. Like, I know that for me, when I'm tired, I'm going to make poor choices in my eating, because somehow the sugar and the caffeine and the whatever, feels like it's giving me what I need to make, the job done, get the job done. When what I needed was a better night's sleep, or what I might need is to go for a walk. Diana, you mentioned physical exercise, and being in nature is restorative when we feel overwhelmed. How does that help you?
Are we asking our audience? You're asking me.
I'm asking you, but I'm also asking the audience, so you can put in the chat.
So I can share a story with you, which happened from the use of some hormones that my cortisol was out of control. You know what happens when your cortisol is out of control? You're feeling a lot of stress and anxiety. And
And you're
when you're,
gaining weight. Women always want
oh,
to know that.
that too, tons of weight. It just, my body wasn't using the chemicals, it was storing them. And it was not healthy for me. But what ends up happening is you feel it's a physiological response, and then your brain you start to lose self confidence. You start to question things. You let anxiety make the decisions for you. So I had to learn. This was several years ago. I had to learn how do I get my body back to a normal state of functioning. The first thing I was told by one of my doctors was get to the gym. And he told me to do heavy weightlifting. I don't do heavy weightlifting. I did light weightlifting. I got on the elliptical. I did everything that I could 3 times a week in the morning to get my body back to normal in a very holistic way. I did not want to take any more medication or any of that kind of a thing. And it took me a while, but guess what? It worked. And it wasn't hard. It was 30 minutes 3 times a week, and my body was responding to the weightlifting. And then in between, the other thing that I did was meditation. When I was feeling overwhelmed at work, I would step outside if I had a break, and I'd go sit behind a tree in the parking lot, and I'd put on just a guided walk through breath work, and I would just treat my body to calm until my body, learned to kind of manage it itself.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, I think this is so important, ladies, that we, again, Christian teaching has actually cut our arms off at times or cut our abilities off at times by demonizing certain practices. And meditation is one of them. Meditation is not a new age term. If you read just one Psalm 119, Psalm 119 is very long. It's about 200 verses. So it's a long Psalm. Cut it into 25 verses a day. But the times that he talks about, I will meditate on your word day and night. The word meditate is in the Psalms over and over and over and over. If anyone hijacked the word, the New Agers hijacked it from the Christians. We did not, it's not their term, it's our term. Let's learn to do it. What does it do? What does it look like? So I'm gonna go through a meditation exercise that I use. I'm going to give you 2 versions when I feel really stressed out. One version has words, one version has no words. Okay? So when I feel overwhelmed by life, I do this for 60 seconds, 90 seconds, a minute. It's not like it takes my day. It takes a moment of self-awareness. My cortisol, my anxiety is high. I'm not thinking straight. I feel overwhelmed. I'm tempted to cry. I'm tempted to eat. I'm tempted to shut down. What do I need to do? So here is the meditation. So let's all do it together. The first meditation, I want you to picture yourself like a giant cello. So I picture myself as a giant cello. And from here to here are my strings. Okay. And I'm, it's out of tune. I am out of tune. And so I just picture myself saying, Lord, help me, tune me up. I can't tune myself up. Tune me up. And so I picture the Holy Spirit just taking the bow and the strings and going, I'm all, and it's going back and forth, just back and forth. And I just, and if I have a swing, I can swing it. I do that. If not, I just picture that back and forth of the bow. And I am just still. Be still and know that I am God. And I just still my body, and I just picture him tuning me so that all the jagged internals that feel out of tune start to fall into place. And I'm breathing in, out, in, out. And I am getting tuned by the Lord God Almighty because he is my maker. And he knows how to tune me. And in 30 seconds, 60 seconds, I feel different. I feel calm. I feel whole. I feel ready to think. So that would be one exercise that you could do. You could do that in the car. You could do that with your eyes open, right? The other one is taking the first few verses of Psalm 23 and I breathe it. So let's practice that. In, the Lord is my shepherd. Out, I shall not want. In, he makes me lie down in green meadows. He leads me beside the still waters and restores my soul. That's it. In, out. I picture myself in the green meadows, smelling the grass, feeling the air. No bugs are crawling on me. I'm just laying in the grass, calm as can be, listening to the river as God restores my soul. What might be possible for you if you let yourself do that? When you got overwhelmed, that you went to your maker for a tune-up. What might that be like? If you did that just real quickly with me, what did that feel like for you? What did that feel like for you? To just slow down and ask the Holy Spirit to tune you up or restore your soul.
I love that. Just acknowledging that the Lord is here and that he's in us and breathing into his peace.
Mm-hmm. Amen. Yeah, we feel peaceful. So instead of now feeling overwhelmed and scattered and full of anxiety, we're trusting God. We're aware of his presence. We're submitting to his control. And that feels a whole lot better, doesn't it? That feels a whole lot better. So what kind of questions do you have for us? We want to answer them. So just put it in the chat. If you have an anonymous question that you don't want in the chat, we had some people, at least one person yesterday who said, is this anonymous? Is this, no, it's not. But I did delete all of her comments afterwards so that she wasn't in there, but so that I didn't want her to feel anxious that what she was even asking that and somebody would see that. But I want you to know if people go to my public Facebook page, they may see your comments. So if you want to ask a question that's more personal that you don't want on my Facebook page, just go to lesliebernick.com/question/ and you can ask a question there, and then my staff will put it on my computer and I'll read it here. While you're doing that, let me tell you about an amazing opportunity I want to share with you. Not this week. So today is Tuesday, not next week, but the week after, starting on June 19th, Monday morning, June 19th, we are going to start a challenge called Moving Beyond. I am going to be with you 5 days in a private Facebook page called Moving Beyond, and we are going to tackle 5 things that I know that Christian women struggle with. And the first one is overwhelm. We're going to talk not about necessarily relaxing, although we will cover that a bit, but we're going to talk about how do you clear the clutter in your head so that it makes sense and then you get organized with what to do next. What's the next right step? So that overwhelm doesn't overwhelm you. A lot of times we have overwhelm, but what do we do to sort overwhelm into doable structures? So we're going to start with that on Monday. So you're going to get an email if you sign up for this. Let me tell you how to sign up for this while you're putting your while you're doing that. So if you want to be a part of this challenge, just go to lesliebernick.com/challenge. And we're going to do this Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. This is how it's going to work. Monday, we're going to talk about moving beyond overwhelm. We're talking about that a little bit today, but we're going to spend a whole hour on our Facebook Live coaching you on your overwhelm and what to do. But in the morning of that day of that challenge, you're going to get an email. It's going to say, here's your day. First day, moving beyond overwhelm. When you feel overwhelmed, I want you to do this. Then I want you to do this, this, this. Do that now. Right? So you're going to do it. It's going to take you about 10 minutes, 15 minutes. You're going to get a brain dump exercise to do. You're going to sort all that out. And then you're going to show up to the live that day. I think that day is 4:00 Eastern time. And then we're going to talk. Myself and a coach will be there with you for a whole hour. And we're going to talk together about overwhelm, only overwhelm. The next day, same thing. You get an email in your email box. Hey, are you struggling with negative thinking? And do they cause some bad moods? How many of you step on the scale? You look at the scale, you say, oh my gosh, I'm in a bad mood for the rest of the day because you're thinking something that's affecting your mood. And we're going to teach you how to manage that. How do you deal with these negative thoughts that lead to bad moods? I will give you some structure to what you can do all by yourself, and then show up for our Facebook Live that day, and we will coach you through your struggles. The next day, we're going to be talking about our fear of failure. How many of you have stopped yourself from doing something interesting or something exciting or something impactful because you were afraid of making mistakes or looking like a fool? You were afraid of failure, and so you didn't do it. Failure was the boogeyman that stopped you, your fear of failure. How do we move past that? Because we all fail. And we're never going to try anything new if we're not willing to fail. And so how do we move beyond that? Same thing, you'll get an email in the morning with some instructions, and then we'll show up at our Facebook Live to coach you through it. The next day, we're going to be talking about how do you move beyond your unrealistic expectations? How many of you have some of those? I'm preparing to go to Lisa Turkhurst's event this weekend. And our expectations are that he's going to change. He's going to change. If only I pray hard enough, if only I nag him enough, if only I be submissive enough, whatever I need, love him enough, he will change. And nothing changes. How do I move beyond my unrealistic expectations? That something's going to happen, that it's not going to happen. Or that someone's going to love me that shows me every evidence that they're not going to love me. It's not unreasonable to hope your husband loves you or your mother, but it might be unrealistic. How do you move beyond that? Same thing, you'll get an email in the morning giving you some instructions on how to do that. We'll coach you in our Facebook Live. And then the last day, Friday, is how I move beyond people pleasing. Same thing, you'll get an email with some instructions, and we'll have a Facebook Live to talk about that. So you get 5 hours of coaching with me and one of my team members. And we're going to charge you because we want you to have some skin on the game. We don't charge you much, but sometimes putting some skin in the game helps you to show up. So it's $23 for the challenge for all 5 days, not just one day, all 5 days, but you do have to pay. That gets you access into the private Facebook group and all the emails. If you don't sign up, you don't get to do that. We'll still do some Facebooks for all of you who can't afford that. But most of us can afford $23 to get a week of intensive help and support. So if those areas are areas that you struggle with, and please invite a friend to join with you. It's not just for women who watch this Facebook Live. We're advertising that to any woman who wants to join the challenge. How do I move beyond these 5 things? Overwhelm, negative thinking, my fear of failure, my unrealistic expectations, and my people-pleasing ways. I think those are biggies, big rocks that all of us as women struggle with. So enough about that. Let me get to your questions about how do I manage my freeze response? How do I manage when I shut down when I'm overwhelmed? So let me go there. I don't see any quite. Oh, here it is. I'm sorry. I get overwhelmed with my 3 kids, ages 4, 6, and 8, when they start fighting with each other. I get overwhelmed. I want to yell and scream at that to stop, and I end up going silent and ignoring it. How do I handle this? How do I handle both my internal world? What I'm hearing you say is I just feel like screaming, so I don't do that, but then I just shut down and ignore it. So how do I handle my internal world, and how do I handle the kids as a good mom? Any thoughts, Diana?
Well, my first thought is I can really enter into what that must feel like when the kids are a little bit crazy and fighting. And I would first have to regulate myself. I would need a minute to really get to calm so that I don't react. And then to think clearly about the best way to step forward. I would separate the kids, honestly, and then take them aside, help them to get calm, and then help them to really process what's going on. I don't think that's an opportunity for discipline. I think it's the first step for me would be understanding what's going on with them and trying to understand what they need. I don't think you can do that when they're all activated and you're activated in response to that.
And this is such a daily thing. It gets exhausting because it's the same thing over and over and over again, because you're their teacher. You are teaching them not just how to obey, but you're teaching them relationship skills. like how to ask for what you want in a nice way, how to handle not getting what you want, because we don't get what we want all the time, right? So how do I handle that in a good way? How do I handle my sister not wanting to share her toy with me without punching her in the face, right? These are all really important relationship skills. And you're here, I imagine, partly because there's some relationship problems in your life, because that's what we talk about a lot, right? And so you want your littles to learn how to manage their relationships with their siblings in better ways than you learned. And so you have to, again, Diana said it right. You have to, I would sometimes say to myself, I need a timeout. Not my kids need a timeout. I need a timeout, not a checkout. I need a timeout to calm down, to think about how I want to handle this. They might also need a timeout to calm down so that they can listen to what you have to say, or that you can listen to what they have to say, or they can listen to one another to what they have to say, because nobody can listen when you're activated, right? When you're activated with your husband, both of you are shouting at each other, no one's listening, or someone's shut down, but they're not listening, right? And so we want to, so teach your kids young, hey, time out, go take 5 deep breaths and calm yourself down.
I think curiosity is a good word. I would, and you're inviting them to be curious about what's going on with them, not just their behavior, but what's going on inside, what's happening here. Inviting them to explore really the situation. What is it that I wanted? What is it that I'm feeling? And really inviting them to learn, how do I want to respond when I'm experiencing these things?
Mm-hmm. Risa in the chat says something really powerful. She said, I got told I act nonchalant. Just because someone says something about you doesn't make it true. But she reflected, she goes, in the middle of a crisis, which is not the case, I learned to stay calm so I can assess the situation. I'm a nurse. I learned this. I have to stay calm. And this is really important to understand. You can learn this. You can learn to stay calm. So if you ever have read a book from a Navy SEAL, I mean, this is what they have to learn, because Navy SEALs are purposely put into high stress, high conflict, high dangerous situations. And if they can't teach their body to stay calm so that they can make the best decision, they can cause a lot of deaths. They can get killed. They can have their whole team get killed in a second, nanosecond of a bad decision. And so they train to keep calm when life is overwhelming, when people are shooting at you, when bombs are going off, when you're lost and you've parachuted into enemy territory. How do you stay calm in the midst of that? And what that says to me in 2 things is that our bodies are normally going to react. Don't be ashamed about that. And you can learn to be calm when overwhelm hits. But you do have to practice. You do have to train. And the Bible tells us something really powerful. It doesn't say, friend, try to be godly. It says train yourself to be godly. Train yourself to be godly. So we, just like a Navy SEAL trains himself to be calm in a crisis, we can train ourselves to be godly. And part of being godly is responding in a provocative situation in a wise way, in a godly way. We've put in the chat, for those of you who are asking the question, when are the Facebook Live times? So they're different times. So Monday will be 4 p.m. Eastern time. Tuesday, the negative thinking will be 12 p.m. Eastern time. Wednesday, fear of failure will be 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. Thursday, unrealistic expectations will be 12 p.m. Eastern time. And Friday, the people pleasing will be 12 p.m. Eastern time. So those are the times that we will be there, but they will all be recorded. So if you can't be there live, you can watch the recording as well. All right. So I hope you got some tips on how to handle your kids fighting. And it might be, that you're going to say the same thing over and over and over again. But I think you can make it fun. Like you could say, okay, time out. Let's practice our breathing so we can all calm down, right? Mommy's going to do it too. Okay, let's practice. How are we going to say you hurt my feelings in a kind way or in a healthy way, not in an angry, accusing, attacking way? Or how are we going to listen and teach them those skills so that when they grow up, they are capable? They have been trained to know how to have good conversations with people and to resolve conflict with people. Just like you're training your kids to do other things, like to do their homework and make their bed and go to the bathroom and brush their teeth. And you're training them. And how many times do you have to tell them? Over and over and over again, so that they build good habit patterns in their lives. Is it exhausting? It is totally exhausting. Parenting is the hardest job ever. It's totally exhausting. That's why it's so important you take good care of you and that you get your sleep. Here's the second question. Are the ways out of fight, flight, freeze, and fawn the same or different? If different, how are they different? I'll just quickly, I think Diana would be more capable of answering that question, so I'm going to give her a couple minutes to think about it. But I think the internal piece of fight, flight, freeze, or fawn is the same, that your nervous system is activated, right? How you handle that may be different depending on your personal history, your biological inclinations, your spiritual, because fawning is typically done by women, not men. And fawning is typically called good Christian submission, right? When a woman is in a destructive relationship and she fawns, what she really is doing is placating and accommodating, and that's seen as good when it's really a trauma response. And so I think that the outcome of the activation, whether you're fighting or fleeing, is often something to do with your own trauma experience, but the activation is the same. The danger levels may be different depending on, and your equipment might be different. So if you're in danger, even a grown man could freeze, right? If he's going to be murdered, right? He could freeze. He wouldn't just fight. And maybe, that would be the same. So Diana, what are you thinking about that?
Well, I think that's a great question, and I'm curious about that. I'm glad that you asked that question. I think the experience of coming out of freeze, and especially out of fight or flight, can be very different in what you're experiencing. And there may be some common symptoms as well. Like I would say extreme fatigue would be one of them. So it might feel different when you're in it or coming out of it, depending on where you're at. But in terms of what you need to get out of it, it's all the same. It's regulation, it's emotional regulation, it's physiological regulation, and I usually get to emotional regulation by using the physiological regulation. And some of those techniques, really, we talk about our grounding techniques for your brain and your body. Some of the things that we mentioned earlier, regulating our nervous system, as Leslie said, starts by getting appropriate sleep, right? The problem is if you're in fight, flight, freeze, and fawn regularly, your system's already overtaxed. So the things we're talking about doing for maintenance, you're going to have to do more of. And you're going to have to be more vigilant about doing that for your body because it's being taxed, right? So I would suggest, addressing diet and lifestyle factors, but also we're talking about the autonomic responses, your physiology, your heart rate, your breathing, and we have many, many exercises and things that we can do to get our body to that regulation or that somatic place of calm. I hope that answers the question. They are very different. They might feel different, but coming out of them, it all amounts to regulation and awareness. And a part of regulation, really, ladies, is really understanding what's happening. And the way that we do that is through journaling and paying attention. So we might be journaling what we're noticing in our body. We might be journaling our thoughts, but we're working with those in a productive way to understand what's going on within.
And what journaling does, and I might not journal if I'm in a crisis, but what journaling does that you can do in the crisis of when you're recognizing, oh my gosh, I'm dysregulating, I'm fawning, or I'm dysregulating, I'm fighting, and I don't want to show up this way, or I'm dysregulated and I'm freezing, is to, when we talk about grounding and journaling, you might not be able to journal right then, but even if you think in words like, oh, I'm in my freeze response, or oh, feel my feet, feel the ground, wiggle my toes, wiggle my hands. You're starting to put words to what you need and what you're doing. Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. And you're not going to journal that at the time, but you are activating your prefrontal cortex in your thinking brain by creating words to describe your experience. I am sitting in a chair. I am looking out the window. I see a bird. I hear a bird. I feel the sunshine. So you're actually calming yourself by noticing and verbalizing what you see, hear, and feel.
The one exercise, what Leslie's saying is excellent. One exercise that we talk about what you see, what you hear, and what you feel, but I really mean taking in what you see. It's one thing I have a bird feeder out here, so that's why I'm looking that way. But it's one thing to notice a bird, but it's quite another just to settle in and just watch the way it moves its wings or its head, or take delight in it, and to really absorb yourself in the colors of the bird. And so it's really paying attention in a deeper way. And so that your body kind of responds to what it's looking at. And if you can practice that and you can do it, you can really start to experience joy in just what you're noticing, because you're taking it in like full flavor. And think about it. For those of us that are on social media, we're getting clicks like this, and it's rapid. So we're undoing all of that, all that does to our brain and our body by taking things in a richer depth.
When they coined the phrase "stop and smell the roses," there's real truth to that. I remember one time in my life when I was feeling really overwhelmed. I had book deadlines and I wasn't meeting them, and I was stressed because I couldn't get the words that I wanted, and I had clients who were in crisis, and house that was a mess, and children that were having issues, and I was just feeling it. And I was in Pennsylvania, and I remember walking out on my deck and seeing the most beautiful sunset, and I just paused. And I just lived in this moment for a moment. And I said, God, this is so beautiful. And it brought such joy and calmness to my spirit. And the Holy Spirit said this to me, and I've never forgotten. He said, I do this nearly every day for you, but you never notice. And so, again, our attention can be so focused on the crisis, the negative, the busyness, the overwhelm, that we forget to notice the beauty and the birds and the songs and the sun, and we don't let our soul be nourished, even in a moment. Smell the flowers, hear the birds, take a walk, breathe in fresh air, so that you can cleanse and purge yourself from all of that other stuff that gets accumulative in your spirit.
And I would have to say, Leslie, that if you're in a constant state of overwhelm, it can lead to a state of being and a mindset. And so for me, sometimes when that happens and I get stuck there, I have to remember it's a clear choice for me to go in the opposite direction. It might sound silly, and I should have brought it down with me, but I had some things I was moving through this weekend, and they were emotional. And I wanted to feel those feelings. And, when you're coming out of, when you're experiencing fight or flight or whatever, don't be mistaken. You're still going to experience emotions in life. And that's a normal thing. But what we don't want to do is allow the emotions to overwhelm us and take us down. So I went to this little, we were up at the lake and there was a little charm they had. It was a lemon. And I wanted to get out of victim mindset. So I bought the little lemon. And it said, when life gives you lemons, make lemonade. And I thought I needed this physical reminder because I was moving through just, loss and grief, just normal stuff, right? But I wanted to carry it with me. And if I can find it real quickly here, I'll read to you what it said. And it might sound silly, but I just needed it. It says, when life gives you lemons, make lemonade. Each day is a fresh start. Take it easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Relax, refresh, renew. Be the zest in life. And remember, when life gives you lemons, sweeten it with gratitude. It was a clear choice for me. I wanted to take something else in.
Yeah. And I think, gratitude is a huge reoriented focuser. I know that when I am moaning and groaning and complaining, and I don't do it to other people, but I do it to myself quite a bit and to the Lord. If I can practice changing the channel to what's good and true and right, like Paul tells us to do that in Philippians 4, I feel differently. I feel differently at the end of a rant of gratitude than I do a rant of what's wrong with my life, right? And so notice that what we think impacts your mood. And we're going to be doing a whole day of that in our challenge. Our negative thinking impacts our mood. And not our positive thinking, because we can go into la la land and be Pollyanna. That's not what the Bible tells us to do. It tells us to think truthfully. So we're not going to ignore real life and real problems, but we are going to remember what's true and good and right. And sometimes in the midst of icky, there is still beauty if we look for it. The Bible tells us there are treasures in darkness in Isaiah. So those are the things that we need to learn to do and have support learning to do it. Because when we see other people doing it, we say, oh, if I see my girlfriend losing weight or she's, getting stronger upper body muscles, I'm like, how are you doing that? Tell me how, right? So when we see some people doing good stuff, we want to learn from them too. We've got some other questions, and I know, Diana, you have a hard stop, so let's get to it. When I try to calm myself, I start crying. Why?
Because you're giving yourself a chance to feel, you're getting quiet, your emotions are surfacing. And that is emotional release. And it's interesting you say that because I started doing gentle yoga. And and I don't cry easy, to be honest. It takes a lot for me. But I've been doing gentle yoga a couple times a week on my floor in the next room here. And I've been feeling the need to cry. And so welcome it. And just allow yourself to, and so I was joking with my friend and I said, oh, I cried this morning. I have no idea why, but my body needed to release something. And so it's not so, and I would say that like for me, I might be really good at suppressing those emotions and just need some time to get quiet and move your body to let it surface.
And I'm going to add a secret to this. So I'm preparing for my event with Lisa this weekend. And one of the things that I teach in my time to teach is what question to ask in order to move from the breakdown to the breakthrough. My talk is on moving from breakdown to breakthrough. So why questions don't lead you anywhere. They just lead you down a rabbit hole. Like, why does he cheat on me? Why won't he change? Why am I crying? Why do I, they don't usually lead you to productive answers. But what is my tears saying? Could. Right? So a what question, what do I need to learn from this? How can I grow from this? Versus why questions can take you down a completely different path that can open up new windows. Like, why did I get cancer? Who knows? Like, why did my child die? There's no answers for that. Job never got his answers for that. But how might I grow through this? What do I need to learn from this? How might I get closer to the Lord through this? Are all really good questions. So the crying question is a very important question, but let's just shift it from why am I crying? Because it's almost like what's wrong with me to, wow, tears, what are you trying to tell me? And that might open up new vestiges of possibilities for you. All right. What's the difference between healthy disassociation and unhealthy fawning?
Oh, that's a good question. You want me to take that first?
Yeah.
Unhealthy fawning, and maybe Leslie has an expanded definition. Unhealthy fawning is when I'm going to acquiesce or engage in a behavior or an emotional response that is going to be for the benefit of someone else at the expense of me. Healthy dissociation, I don't even know if I would use the term healthy dissociation.
Yeah.
I would say dissociation is a patterned response that we learn to shut down and to check out, where we're maybe not even cognitively or emotionally all there. We're not all present. We kind of go to a different place. We might feel like we're overwhelmed, and we just kind of shut down and tune out. And it's a coping strategy for maybe a stressful or difficult experience. It can become a patterned way of being. Some artificial ways that we dissociate would be the first thing that comes up for me is we can dissociate through overeating. We could do it with drugs and alcohol. So I would say that they are both unhealthy ways of being. We want to recognize when we're fawning, and we also want to recognize when we're shutting down and dissociating, because we're missing out on the experience and the richness of life. We're not fully present and awake and aware.
Yeah, I struggled with the term healthy disassociation too. I think there's typical dissociation, like when you're driving a car and you kind of go hypnotic and you think, oh my gosh, where am I? Wherever you were, you weren't there. But I'm not sure that's healthy, but I do think it's pretty normal for us to do that. And so that would be an illustration of healthy dissociation. Maybe another illustration of healthy disassociation is what God gives us when we're in the middle of trauma. So I have a friend who fell off the roof when he was roofing his house, and he remembers falling off the roof, but he doesn't remember landing, even though he was totally conscious, and he never went unconscious. He doesn't remember his back being broken. He doesn't remember going into the ambulance. He doesn't remember, he woke up in pain, but he doesn't remember the incident of the trauma. Maybe you're in a car accident and you don't remember that. Even though you were totally conscious, you would totally disassociate that, because it's a gift that God gives us in our bodies to not have to remember everything that we don't maybe need to remember anymore. Someone can tell us enough of the details that we don't remember. We don't have to remember being raped, or we don't have to remember our backs being broken in technicolor detail, right? We know what happened, but we don't have to viscerally remember it. Our body's disassociated, our mind disassociated from our body. That might be the definition of healthy or normal disassociation, when that becomes a habitual response to something I don't like or something I don't want to do as I flip into I'm not here, then it's unhealthy. And it's a habit that often happens for children who, in a healthy way, disassociated if they were being sexually abused. That was a healthy way God had wired us to not have to remember certain things. But over time, that becomes a way of living that's unhealthy. So that might be my answer to that. Where fawning, again, is you giving up you to accommodate someone else because you're afraid. Usually the trauma response, fight, flight, freeze, is done out of fear. And so when it's one thing to say, sure, I can give in. I don't have a problem. We can go for pizza if you want, but I'm not afraid. I'm just pleasing or accommodating. And that might be unhealthy people pleasing, or it might just be, I don't care. And I'm honest about that. But when I'm fawning, it's usually out of fear that if I don't do this, I'm going to get hurt in some way.
Yeah.
I hope that's helpful. All right. Let's try one more before you have to go.
Okay.
Let's see. I'm going through a divorce with a narcissistic husband. He often tries to do things to make me fearful of my future financially. When that happens, I tend to just freeze and struggle interacting with my family or even being able to focus on life in the moment or work. How can I stop the trauma reaction?
Wow. Um, so the first thing I think you do is you recognize what's happening in the moment. And so that's we want to kind of stop the automatic response of freezing. So the first thing you need to do with awareness is understand that you're feeling like you're being abused in that moment and what's happening to you. So you kind of have to catch yourself wanting to shut down. And then you talk to yourself. In those moments, you will coach yourself. This is not okay. This is abuse. I have choices. I can stay present. Because it's robbing you in the moment of really, like you said here, you're not able to focus on life or your family. So the first thing to do is to work on that response of shutting down and pulling away. So you want to stay present, and then once you stay present, you want to get to calm, and you want to be able to clearly move through some choices that you have about what's actually happening to you. But as long as he keeps triggering you with the abuse dynamics or the financial control, what's happening is you're shutting down and you're giving up. That's the intended response. He wants you to give up. He wants you to not have agency, and it's working. And so, and I think a part of that, when that happens, sometimes when we shut down and dissociate like that or give up, we feel very small. And what you want to remember in those moments is, I feel small, but I'm not small. I'm a grown adult woman with a thinking brain, and I have resources. Because we don't want to stay in that stuck, small, trapped place. That's an emotional response. And often it almost feels like a younger part of yourself that just, think about it. When you're a child, you're small. You don't have options, but that is not true. So there are some lies happening along with that as well.
Yeah, thank you, Diana. I would say yes to what Diana said, but I also would say he often tries to do things to make me fearful of my future financially. Mm-hmm. So those are his strategies. So I think this is where you may have to do some of your own inner work about your attachment to your finances. That would be one thing. So that if I don't have the money that I'm owed, or I don't have the money that I'm rightly deserve as a partner in this relationship, what would that mean? What does that look like? Can I, problem solve that to say, hey, if he takes everything, I will still be okay. That I can get a job, I can work. No, I'm not going to be able to stay in this home, but I'm not going to die. So I'm going to draw a picture for you that might be helpful. This helps me quite a bit. I use this tool a lot. And let me just draw this picture. So you've got an external reality that I need money to live. So internal, external, right? So the external reality is money, and the internal reality is fear. Big scary face, like that, all right? And so if I don't have the money that I'm supposed to have, or if I don't have the love that I want from my husband, or if I get divorced, can I still be okay? Can I still be okay? Or what might I do? Or what do I need to do in order to be okay? When I was a young mom, my husband was diagnosed with a very serious cancer. And I had to really work through this. If he dies, that was pretty scary. And I had a child, and will I be okay? I'm not saying I won't grieve. I'm not saying I won't be angry. I'm not saying I won't be unhappy. But what did I know from the depths of my soul that I could manage that? That gives you a lot of confidence when someone tries to bully you, when someone tries to threaten you, when someone, or just life becomes scary, because life is scary. And so one of the things that God says is that we're to know that whatever happens here, this world is not our home, and we will be okay. God will help us. You might not have the perks, the jewelry, the house, the car that you were used to, but will you be okay? Once you know that at the depths of your soul, guess what? His power to scare you doesn't work anymore. It's like the Wizard of Oz when he was going, I am Oz, big and powerful. And Dorothy was like behind the curtain scared. And then the dog pulled the curtain back and she realized, oh my gosh, he's just like a weenie man. He's nobody. I don't have to let him intimidate me anymore. And that's what happens with narcissists. They become bigger than life and you become this very small, fragile nobody. And he treats you like that. And you start to believe that. So what might happen if you said, if he takes everything, I will be fine. I can get a job. I can support myself. And if I can't do that yet, what do I need to do to be capable of that? So that if that happens, I'm ready.
Leslie, thanks for having me. I want to just shout out to everyone that's watching. Join us for the challenge. It'll be life-changing and fun.
Yeah. For $23, you're going to get a year's worth of therapy, really, a year's worth of coaching, really. It's really that good. We've done it for 4 years in a row. We've gotten tons of responses that are positive, that this has been the best week of my life in terms of understanding things. You see the value you get in just this hour. And so it's just going to be a much more intimate group. You're going to have each other working on the same thing in the Facebook page so that you can have that support. And so we really want you, if you have the time, and these are the 5 topics that interest you, we really would love for you to join us in the challenge, but you do need to sign up. So go to leslievernick.com/challenge. Diana, I'm going to say goodbye to you. I know you've got an appointment. I'm going to go for a few more minutes and answer a couple more questions. All right. Thanks.
Bye for now.
All right. Bye-bye. All right. I'm going to answer a few more questions and I also have to go. I have a flight to catch. I have a flight to reserve for I didn't even check in yet. So I've got to do that. I've got to get ready for my event with Lisa this week. We're very excited. We have 60 amazing women coming to Haven House to do an intensive. If you ever want to do that, the next one we're doing is in October. Let's see. My husband has been neglecting me by being indifferent and zero emotional connection, not considering my opinion on many important subjects, also not wanting to have intimacy of any kind, physical, emotional, nothing. He said that he behaves this way because of the way I am toward him. I know I'm not perfect, but I always try to reconcile. After 4.5 years of trying and seeking help, I decided to separate and then file for divorce since he doesn't recognize his responsibility. After I did this, he asked me to stop the divorce process. He wanted another opportunity and was willing to seek help. I hear so many voices right now. Some tell me I should just divorce since there are so many hidden things that we don't know what he's capable of in these last years. I wonder what your opinion would be. I really need help. I am from Mexico. And here we don't have easy access to these resources and information in churches. Thank you. Yeah, I don't know the legal laws in Mexico as well as I know them here. So let me just answer this best I can. I think that in the United States, you can put a divorce on hold, still having the legal protection financially of assets. I don't know if that's true in Mexico, or if both of you are in Mexico, or if you're in the United States right now. So I don't know those details. But in the United States, there are very few states that have something called a legal separation. And so when you file for divorce, what that notifies the state of is that we are no longer functioning as a joint marital unit. Therefore, our finances are locked, not that you can't spend money, but they're locked in terms of legal accountability. Now, this is what often happens for those of you who are in overwhelm and you freeze and you shut down, is while you're having marital troubles, you haven't filed for divorce, especially if you're with a clever, wealthy person, they start funding off marital assets to private separate accounts that aren't marital assets. And they do this all before you ever file for divorce. Once you file for divorce, they're not allowed to do that, because before the divorce, the state doesn't care what you do with your money as a married couple. So if you're a married couple and your husband takes all the money and gambles it away, you have no legal recourse because you're a married couple. The law's not going to come and say, he shouldn't have done that, half of that was yours. The only way you can do that is by filing for divorce. That's when the state gets involved in your marital assets. So I don't know where you are with assets. If you don't have any assets and that's not an issue, then I might say, so why wouldn't you wait and say, let's have a conversation. So why were you the way you were for the last couple of years? Why, get some information, see if he's willing to tell you the truth. And then I would do some background checking on him. So I would run a credit report for sure to see where the money is or where he's been spending, if at all, or if he's honest with what he's done. I would ask him for phone records and credit card statements so that I can verify what he's saying is true or not true. If he's unwilling to do that, and he said, I can't believe you don't trust me. No, I actually don't trust you, but I could learn to trust you if we can share. And if there's a problem, just tell me, because if I'm going to see it, I'm going to see it. So this is the part of coming clean. And if you're going to have a fresh start, you got to have a fresh start with transparency and accountability. And if that's not going to happen and there's no willingness for that, then don't even hold out hope or give any more time to that. So if you can be strong enough and you're not getting overwhelmed by fear or anxiety or I'm being a bad woman or I shouldn't do this because God wouldn't want me to, those kind of negative thoughts that we're going to be talking about in the challenge. This is why it's so important, ladies, that not only do you become more self-aware, but nobody's so totally self-aware of stuff. And that's why you need other godly people in your life. I hope I can be one of them. But that's why you have other godly people in your life to help you to think about things you never thought about or show you things that you can't see for yourself. Like every morning when I do my hair, I need a truth teller because I can see this part of my hair, but I can't see this part of my hair. And with short hair, this part of your hair just kind of sticks straight up and you don't even know it. Have you seen ladies when you're walking behind someone and their hair is just like all gross in the back and they didn't look in the mirror? They didn't look in the back mirror to pull down the back of their hair. Or you've got lipstick all over your teeth and you didn't know it because you didn't look in the mirror, or you don't have a friend to tell you. And so we can't do life well all by ourselves. That's why we come on Facebook. That's why we do so many things, no charge, and we're happy to do it. We have other things that you have to pay for, like this challenge, which isn't much, but it helps our tech team and all that. I pay them to do all of that. I pay a tech team to do this. We want to help you. We want to be influencers in your life for good so that you aren't so stuck in some of the teaching that I was stuck in for so long as a young Christian mom and a young Christian woman. I wanted to love God and serve God with all of my heart, soul, mind, and strength, and I still do. But some of the teaching I got about how to do that, like you just need to die to yourself and don't care about what you think or feel, isn't actually true. And it took me a lot of doing my own work to get to a place. So I don't know that I can give you all those answers, but I think a marriage is worth at least having a honest, hard conversation. And you do your part and see if he does his. You can't do his part. All you can do is invite him to come clean and be honest with where he's been in this marriage over the last couple of years and why it's always been your fault that he doesn't step up to the plate, right? Because if we don't step up to the plate, that's not anybody's decision but ours. And so if he's blaming you, don't take that blame. And that's been very typical Christian counseling, that somehow if he watched porn, you needed to have more sex. If he got angry, you needed to stop asking him so many questions. If he, had an affair, it was because you weren't available enough. It's always your fault that he acts out, and it's not true. So if you have a conversation with just, okay, tell me what's been going on with you and why you did what you did, and he doesn't blame you and he owns it, well, then maybe that's something worth pursuing some more. And if it comes back to the same old, then maybe that's your answer. All right. I hope that helps you. All right. I think there's one more question. Now that my husband and I are addressing our issues, I realize my oldest behaves in very abusive, manipulative ways. A lot of these tools will help me address his behavior, but the relationship isn't the same. I can't move out and leave my 13-year-old. Do you have any additional tools for addressing this behavior in children? So this is hard for a couple of reasons. He's 13 years old and he's a boy. So even if you had a good relationship with him at this point in his life, he does not want to take advice from his mom because it makes him feel small. It makes him feel like a child and he's growing into a man. So it shames him to feel like he needs his mama. Regardless, At 13, all 13-year-old boys want to grow into being men who don't need their mother. Right? So for you to have influence and impact on his life is always tricky at this age, but it's especially tricky since he's already adopted some of his dad's ways. It confuses me a little bit, though. You say, my husband and I are addressing our issues. If your husband is addressing his issues about being an abusive man, maybe it's his place to have this conversation with your son. And if he won't, so I'm just going to assume if he won't, but he might, but if he won't, and this is what I would like you to think about saying. Whenever you address your son, you're going to address him in two ways. You're going to address him as, hey, I know you're growing up to be a man. So you're always going to affirm his manhood. That will be an opportunity. Instead of treating him like a child, you need to listen to your mother. I know you're growing up to be a man. But as your mom, I want you to think about what kind of man you want to be. Do you want to be a good man, a loving man, a strong man, but not a bully man, not a mean man? And right now, the way that you're talking to me, it feels like you're growing up to be a mean man. I want you to think about that. Is that who you really want to be? So his character and his personhood as who he wants to be as a man is being shaped by life, by his parents, and also by who he wants to be. Sadly, too many men aren't very reflective or don't even think about that. Like when I work with abusive men and I say, I remember one time a child who was 13 accused her stepfather of sexually abusing her. And he came in, and of course they didn't do it together, but he came in because I was, calling the police, and he came in and denied it and said it didn't happen and blah, 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 blah. And the thing I said to him is that I don't know whether it happened or not. She said it happened. You said it didn't. So here's what I want you to think about. What kind of stepfather do you really want to be? Because if you want to be a good stepfather and you did do this, the best thing you could do right now is own it and say it's your fault and that you'll do the work to get healthy. The worst thing that you could do is deny it and make her look crazy. So you decide what kind of dad you want to be. And he started crying and he said, I want to be a good dad. I did it. I was wrong. So sometimes when we can speak into that higher self that all of us usually want to be, unless we're a narcissist because they think they are their highest self. But for a developing boy or a girl even, how do you want to show up as your best self? What kind of man do you want to be? Those are the questions you want to ask him, not, you can't treat me this way and stop it. Those are mom voices that a 13-year-old is going to arch their back and rebel against, even if they're good boys, even if they've had a good relationship with you, because they must start asserting their own self. Every 13, 14, 15-year-old child must start developing a self. I'm different than you, Mom. I don't want to do that. I don't like that. That's not what I want to do. That's not how I want to be. I don't believe those things. And they have to have the freedom to have that conversation with you, and you affirm the good parts of that, right? So that's the best advice I can give you. I'm not a parenting expert, but I hope that helps. All right. All right, thanks so much for being with me today. Our next Facebook Live is not going to be tomorrow. I'm going to be in an airplane, and I will not be able to be here the rest of the week, but I'll be here all next week on Facebook Live. But this week, my coaches are going to take over because I am going to be at Lisa Turkhurst's event, and that's pretty intensive, and so I don't have the bandwidth to do both. But our next Facebook Live will be Wednesday. No, it won't be Wednesday. That's our, let me see when our next Facebook Live will be. Is Thursday, June 8th at 12 p.m. Eastern time. Why do we say yes to everything and everyone? Is it a fawn response? Is it a people-pleasing response? Are we aware of why we say yes to everyone and everything to our own peril? Come on Thursday at noon Eastern time, and two of our coaches will be here to help you answer that question and figure it out. So I will be back on Monday, and I'll look forward to seeing you then. And in the meantime, sign up for the challenge, get yourself on the Facebook page so that you can start meeting each other and having conversations, even as you listen to these lives pre-challenge. All right, take care. God bless. Bye-bye.